All right, welcome back to the Blog Boy Roundtable. I'm Seth Varnadore, joined by Nick Simon. Just a couple of the Blog Boys. Not so much a roundtable as kind of a one-on-one here. But we've got some breaking news in college football. Last night, Pat Fitzgerald was fired at Northwestern amid allegations of hazing, and then other things have kind of sort of spring up since the initial allegation. Um, this is a this was a totally bungled process. It seems like by Northwestern. Friday they announced a 2 week suspension, which when you're reading, reading through it, it seems it was the president and Fitzgerald and maybe the AD as well, all were together, came up with a suspension based on the findings of a third party report. Um, and then Saturday, I think Friday kind of piqued everyone's interest. Everyone kind of eyebrows got raised. And then Saturday, the student newspaper came out with an article from an anonymous player from the past detailing some of these issues. Saturday night, we had like it was like a Saturday night at 11:45 p.m. News dump type. The new president comes out and says maybe he was wrong, and then it's just really accelerated to the firing yesterday. Nick, what have you kind of how have you been following this? Does it seem to move pretty quick here?
It was a wild 72. It was a wild 72 hours. And so going back, we were just talking about this before we came on air. Going back to Friday, they announced the suspension. And looking back on it, it seemed like so obviously like all these hazing allegations were floating like around Evanston and people were willing to come out and speak out. So it seemed like they went through the process of going and getting the independent investigator to not only in laying down suspension so they can kind of get ahead of the reports before all of the really excruciating details came out about the scandal. And of course, like the Northwestern, the Daily Northwestern, the student newspaper, completely drops like the bombshell right after the 2 week suspension um, comes out. Which again, we were talking about this. Northwestern is literally the worst place to commit a scandal because it is the journalism school. If there's something that's going on, somebody on that campus
Yeah.
needs to like kick in and do some investigative work, and within hours you're gonna have the scoops and everything like that. But yeah,
Not the ones to be trifled with,
not
the
the ones
Northwestern
not to
journal
be trifled with at all.
metal graduates, right?
But yeah, it's just an all around. It was just an all around whirlwind, bizarre story of like just a very bizarre scandal when you go into like the details of what's really going on. Like there's levels of like just benign hazing when it
Yeah.
comes to like football teams, like like just the like something simple like, okay, hey, we're gonna freshmen, you're gonna have to shave your heads or whatever. Some of the stuff that they were describing, or some of the stuff that some of the anonymous players who came out and spoke to the Daily Northwestern were describing, it's just completely beyond the pale and disturbing. Like all of the Shrek stuff they were talking about, just
Yeah, it was all it was all like sexual. Or it seemed like a majority of it was sexual and sexual assault kind of related. It was I've never, I've coached and played, high school and college. I'd never heard of any like we didn't haze. We didn't have that. Now maybe I was lucky or in an odd circumstance, but we didn't have any of this kind of stuff. So it's so bizarre to me to see these kind of things happen, especially of this kind of nature. It's not like like the one thing the Gatorade chug thing. That one to me was more of the benign side a little bit, but maybe I don't know what just with what's in it, like the Gatorade protein shake stuff. Like there's milk chugs and stuff like that happen, but um, like all the other stuff was like explicitly sexual stuff. It seemed like masks, and then the car wash thing, and I think the worst to me, like not the worst, obviously the if the allegations are true, which they seem to be corroborated, right? Obviously that's the worst stuff, but the investigation was so poor seemingly, and the initial punishment was so poor, it almost casts doubt on, like, for some people, I think it was so bad that they have actually casted doubt on some of the accusations a little bit, just because it was so poorly. Because if this is true, why would you try to do a 2-week suspension off the top?
It seemed
Like
like
that's so like that's the crazy. If it's like as widespread as it seems, the reporting says, and that's what the reporting, and this seems they seem pretty confident, and they even say that some of the stuff they reported was corroborated by the investigation. Why only a 2-week suspension at the start?
it seemed like they just tried to sneak this in.
Yeah,
It's middle of July. It's before, we're still a few weeks away from Big Ten Media Days. So like, let's just kind of sneak like this, just kind of appear like we have this under control, sneak this in, following 4th of July holiday, and like no one is really going
yeah.
to notice or look into this. Which again, like I just said, it's Northwestern.
Yeah.
It's Medill. Like those students, they're gonna look into like
They putting on the eye black when they saw that on Friday. That's like they got them geared up.
yeah, just it's weird because like it was kind of a quiet. This happens every single year where there's at least like one scandal like this that brings down like a head coach or gets close to bringing down a head coach, and it had been quiet these last few months on that front, and then this guy and this comes and now this like Big Ten program is in turmoil.
Yeah. And I think the other part that's kind of bizarre is they've still maintained, even after firing Fitzgerald, they maintained that the investigation showed he didn't know these things were happening, and they maintained that, I think, in the release they had of his firing. So, I mean, if you're Pat Fitzgerald, you're probably going to get paid out. Like it certainly seems like the investigation was so poor that you're going to get paid out. But it's I don't know. It's kind of tough.
And that was a point of contention, is like the plausible deniability of
Yeah.
how much Fitzgerald knew, which
I as a former coach, I think if this kind of stuff's going on and it's widespread, you've heard about it.
you've heard about it. Like you can't again, man. You are this basically the top level. You're the CEO of this organization that is Northwestern football, right?
Yeah.
You may not be there for the car wash, for like the car wash, or
But if
like
it's happening every year, you've
it's
heard
happening.
about
It's
the car
happening
wash.
every year, and if you're not there, like your staff knows, like like somebody in that building like knows what's going on.
And
So,
that's
even if like you're like completely oblivious
yeah.
to like what's going on, that's still a failure on your part, because
Yeah.
people are supposed to report this stuff.
Yeah.
So it
It's a
means
like institutional control issue. It's like it's just like, I mean, this is no I to it's really kind of no it's obviously a lot more serious, but the rule that's been put in basically about committing like recruiting NCAA violations. Now the head coaches are held responsible even if they didn't know somebody under their care or is committing these violations. It's kind of that. The other odd thing about this is that, and they're keeping all the assistants. I know. I'm sure there's some of those guys have been there for a long time.
and that was one thing what I was thinking about, like your steps forward and how you untangle this mess, especially when it comes to just even naming an interim coach. Like this is clearly a program wide problem where multiple people's hands are dirty in this, because because like
If you're saying like that's the thing. If you're saying Fitzgerald, your investigation says he didn't know, which I think we can agree if this is happening, you should know. Then okay, then who knew? The assistants knew. Okay, we're gonna keep them all.
Yeah, and maybe because again their season literally starts in less than
Yeah, it's
8 weeks.
I think they have media day in like 2 weeks.
In like 2 weeks. You you can't like so it's like okay we're gonna clear all of these people out of here like at the end of the season, but we can't like
Yeah, it's a
completely.
tough spot, but it is. But like there's some coaches that are new, and I think the D coordinator is brand new from North Dakota State. He's going to be kind of, I guess, the interim. I don't know if there's been any talk. Has there been any talk of them going outside and like and getting like a stopgap for a year?
No, I think they'll roll with. I think they'll roll
Roll
with
with it.
that guy as the interim, like not do
And
more.
he's new, so like he's got a lot of I would imagine he's not involved. I know the receivers coach Armand Benz. That's the name I think people probably may remember from his time in college. He's new as well, but there's guys on staff that are going back to like 2008, 2013. Like there's guys on staff that have been there a long time. So yeah, I don't know how you untangle it. And it seems like this is just kind of. I don't think it really the end result is not great for anybody. It seems like just because of how bad the investigation and the initial handling was, you don't have. There's still some questions when I think there should be some definitiveness with these type of allegations. If this stuff's widespread, you've got to start punishing more people, right? It can't be just one guy, and then you say, and then as you fire him, you say, well, he didn't know. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, what's really going on here? Like, we needed some. If this is going on, people have got heads got to roll, right? Like,
it's not just from like a firing standpoint. This goes into
it's like
like
criminal, yeah,
criminal invent. Like you can like this is a criminal investigation. There's hazing laws with these universities. Obviously, you're dealing with sexual assault, like
yeah,
sexual assault. So yeah, like it's just such a
yeah,
bizarre and gross situation going
yeah.
on, and
Yeah, and this is going to be, and now like I guess their baseball coach is having an issue too. So it's going to be interesting times here at Northwest. And then I think like a couple months ago they had an AD that was initially hired that had some issue in reporting something, and he ended up getting ousted, kind of with campus pressure from those on campus. So uh, it's going to be really interesting to see how they go forward. I think we both think they're probably just going to go the interim route with the guy with the new D coordinator on staff. After that, though, I mean, this is a really once you get outside the kind of the allegations and you kind of if you can compartmentalize that, just the job in itself is kind of a really interesting job, right? You're in the Big Ten. So you're
you're
going to have a ton of money. So you're in the Big Two, right? The Power Two. You're in Chicago, huge
you're
media market that I think is not like this Northwestern is not like. I think they have some people in market, right? They have a pretty good following in market. It's not like Rutgers in like New York City or whatever, right?
it it
I
so
think
like
Notre Dame's probably king, right? I would imagine
yeah, like other Big Ten school because the thing is Northwestern, it's a private school, so it's like going to naturally be
smaller base.
a smaller base that's more confined within kind of their area of Evanston, which is like suburb north side of Chicago. So so again, like you mentioned, Big Ten school, so ungodly amount of money about to come in, especially with the media rights deals. You're Northwestern. You're like they fancy themselves as like a Midwest Ivy, as a Midwest Ivy. So their endowment is probably ridiculous, right? So
Yeah.
you already have plenty of money. I mean,
Great facilities, like
great.
the indoors, probably like one of the coolest looking indoors in the country. Allegedly, I mean, we'll see. There may have been slowed down, but they're putting a ton of money into their stadium as well. Like there's investment there too. So, but like you said, it's like a Midwest Ivy, so it is difficult to
It's a
get people in.
it's kind of a similar situation to like say like Vanderbilt, where you're in this dominant football conference. You're in this dominant football conference, and you're a private institution. So just it's going to be it's already kind of tricky to recruit because you can't necessarily you have like academic standards and thresholds just to get into the door at Northwestern if you're a student athlete. So that's going to that's going to be an impediment. That's going to be an impediment on who you can recruit and everything like that. So historically, it's been before Fitzgerald. This has been a dead end job in the Big Ten,
Yeah.
and then Fitzgerald kind of laid the groundwork where it's like you can at least consistently go to bowl games here, but it's still going to be incredibly tough considering where you are in the conference, considering who's coming into the conference, and now for this new head coach, you're going to have to come in and not only deal with all of that, but you're going to have to like try to clean all of this mess up and like deal with the aftermath of like all of this mess. And it's going to be fascinating just to see how this coaching search plays out over the next few months.
Yeah, and you've got some like internal, like you said, the mess to clean up. Not only just like what's on your roster still, it's like some of those guys have come out and been really loud and supportive of Fitzgerald. So like it's going to be hard for anybody coming in just with that aspect of it too. This is. I think the other part, Fitzgerald was able to have some success, but it was pretty much all before the transfer portal got kicked up.
Yes.
Once the portal, so this is, I think, how much harder is this job with the transfer portal? Because if you do get a guy in, is he going to stay? And now maybe you might have the like money with NIL and alumni to maybe keep guys, but I would think that could be something that if you get a guy in, that you could keep them with your money. But if guys want to play for a winner, it's going to be hard to retain players. So, and then you can't really go out and get a ton. It's not like you can just go out and grab the best guy out of the portal every year. They got to get into school. So
yeah, exactly.
How much harder do you think it is now than it was when even Fitzgerald took over 17 years ago?
Yeah, so again, like Fitzgerald, he's winning his head coach in program history, and he also like his calling card was getting players to the NFL. Like I was looking it up, and Northwestern has produced like something like 3 or 4 first-round picks in the last 4 or 5 years or so. Rashawn Slater, this past year, Peter Skoronski, the offensive tackle. What's his name? Newsome, cornerback. So it's definitely, and so with the right guy there, you could definitely that's definitely a draw when it comes to getting kids to Northwestern. Like we can develop you and get you to the league. But that was with Fitzgerald.
Yeah,
who knows that next guy is going to be able to do that and replicate that.
Yeah, I think that's the big question, right? Is if can you get the players in and then be able to retain them in this new transfer portal area? They were able to. Some of those guys were just kind of on the fringe of the transfer portal, but like Skoronski was there. He could have transferred, but he stayed first round pick. So what do you think they need in the next coach? Obviously, you need somebody to reset the culture, but kind of beyond that, what do you think is important? Because I have some things I think that are more important than others in this job.
I mean, I think that for the so this may be, and so it may be like you hire this next guy just solely because this is such a bad scandal. You hire this next guy just solely as like kind of a cleanup,
just steady the ship, basically.
Steady the ship, cleanup guy, well respected dude who's going to reestablish respect within the locker room and reestablish trust within the university. And then maybe like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years from now, if he doesn't like have success on the field, then at the very least, you're going to at the very least, like you're going to be on solid footing culture wise,
A
and
little
then
more attractive.
and then you'll be more attractive.
Yeah.
But
So what?
also, I think you also for this job, you need someone who has experience, kind of cleaning stuff up and turning around tough situations. Like who understands how to go into tough situations to succeed.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it's also like I think needs to be like if it kind of depends, I guess. If you want to me, if you want to win at Northwestern, and you're not going to ever win big, but if you want to win, I think you have to be kind of unique. You have to be like scheme. You got to go get a scheme guy that's got something different, like a different kind of scheme, something that's going to be tough for people to prep for, a tough 3-day prep, right? Like that's kind of what you got to do to me is go get one of those guys. But um, you got some, but yeah, like you said, I think somebody that's kind of shown the ability to build a program might be helpful too, because you might have to tear this thing down to the studs. So, um, to me, recruiting is kind of secondary. It's mostly like scheme and development. Can you get guys on campus that fit your scheme and develop? And so I've got a couple. I've got a few names, but I know you wrote a piece for DK Nation the other day, um, and you had some names you liked. What were you thinking on kind of what direction they could go for this next coach?
Yeah, so just right off the bat, I put down Willie Fritz. His name has been um, brought up for a bunch of these Power Five openings over the past couple of years, even before Tulane's amazing season last year. He nearly went to Georgia Tech, which institutionally kind of in a similar spot as Northwestern, maybe a little bit less money than Northwestern, but he nearly went to Georgia Tech before he stayed at Tulane. But yeah, kind of just similar situation. Private school, can't necessarily, your hands are kind of tied when it comes to recruiting, but the scheme that he wants gives him a leg up, is able to give them a leg up. And so, he's a guy who's very well respected within the coaching community. He's been around for a long time, coached at multiple levels within college football, and just right off the bat, like hiring Willie Fritz is going to be a win, just PR wise for Northwestern. Yeah, just him being able to go in there, clean up the culture, install like his unique offense from that he had success with that Tulane, and I think that would be like perfect fit. I think that would be a fit.
Yeah, I had him on my list as well. Just a guy that has in the past done some unique things schematically. Like you said, has some experience in a similar type situation. Was a fit at Georgia. It seemed like he was going to get hired at Georgia Tech until he decided that he wanted to coach the bowl game, and they kind of moved. This certainly seemed like it was all locked up for him to go to Georgia Tech last year. So similar situation in terms of academics. A little bit different on the recruiting side, but yeah, he's a guy I think has to be on the list. I think a similar guy, and not quite the same in terms of scheme, but Jeff Monken for me, the Army head coach, I think is another guy that's always seemed to be close to getting a shot at a higher level or a P5 job. I think you probably feel pretty good where he's going to be at with the culture of the program. I think it seems coming from Army, I think he's probably understands how to run a clean and tight ship. And he does some unique things schematically. They're going away from the option a little bit, but they're adding some different wrinkles. I think there's a really good article. I think Richard Johnson wrote it a week or two ago about Army's kind of what they're doing offensively, how they're changing a little bit.
Kind of going to that like the shotgun, like more shotgun concept with the option.
And that's where I think Northwestern, when they first like kind of burst back onto the scene, was like Randy Walker. He ended up passing away, and I think Fitzgerald took over for him. Maybe I'm not, or it might have been Barnett. But Randy Walker, he put in like a crazy spread, and there's like a game against Michigan, the super famous game, I think 2000. ish, early 2000s, Northwestern Michigan was like 49, 48, some crazy barn burner, super high scoring game, which is super out of the ordinary for the Big Ten. So, like, to me, Northwestern, you've got to do something different schematically. Monken seems like a guy that will be able to do that and is kind of adaptable. So, who else you got? What do you think about Monken? And then who else do you have kind of on your list? You had some other good names, I thought.
Yeah, so Monken's definitely a good one. Again, similar to Fritz, he's a guy who's like been knocking on the door of a Power 5 coaching gig for like really several years now, and just like it's just the stigma of running the option is kind of what's like capped him, and he's kind of had to change things up to be more presentable to these big time programs. Another dude that I just threw out was Derek Mason. Derek Mason, the former Vanderbilt head coach. He was at Auburn 2 years ago as a defensive coordinator, at Oklahoma State last year as a defensive coordinator, and then this year he's basically taking the year off as a sabbatical. But kind of like similar situation to kind of similar for what we've been talking about. He's been at a tough job like Vanderbilt, where again similar academics. So a guy who would understand at least understand what it would take to like have success at a program and how to recruit at a program like Northwestern.
What do you think about his guy he worked with, David Shaw? Is that a name that, or you? To me, I don't. He kind of.
Could you try again?
What do you think about David Shaw? Anything on him? Like, do you think he's kind of burnt out? It seemed like Stanford was his alma mater, right? So I don't know. It seems like he might be burnt out a little bit, but maybe a year away refreshes him.
I thought about David Shaw, and the thing is, it seems like David Shaw is angling to like try to get back towards the NFL.
Yeah.
If anything, I mean, he could. He would be definitely well qualified to take over at Northwestern. I just think like his name has always been bandied about as a potential like coordinator or even a potential head coach in the NFL. Just considering that that's really where he cut his teeth like 2 decades ago. I know he was with the Ravens, I think the Raiders and other teams like that before he jumped back into college and had all the success at Stanford. But if you're able to get Shaw, and convince him to come, especially with all the money you have, that's a home run.
Yeah,
that's a home run for Northwestern. And plus, I was looking up, he's only 52, 51.
No, he's not old. He's still a young guy.
Yeah, so you can get plenty of years out of David Shaw.
Yeah. I think he would be, if he's interested, I think he's an interesting name. I just don't know. Like you said, he might actually want like a year where he's got to see how it would look if he's got the same talent as the other teams he's playing. That might be fun for him to kind of see what that's like. You had another name on your list that I thought was interesting. Just kind of like if you're looking to go like the Lance Leipold route and you're just going to hire, I have a couple names on here as well that I'll get to, but I think your last name you had on there, if you're looking to kind of go the Leipold route where a guy that's been really successful at a lower level and you're just like, you know what, bring it up here. Who was that last name you had?
Chris Creighton out of Eastern Michigan. One of the kind of more underrated coaches in college football because I guess because he's at Eastern Michigan,
which has been called by some the hardest place to win in college football.
The factory,
Division I,
yeah, like the factory, like it's one of, even by MAC standards, it was one of the more moribund programs in that entire conference. Like before he arrived, I don't think they had been to a bowl game since like 1987 or something like that. Just losing season after losing season after losing season in a place like Ypsilanti, Michigan, which is like right down the road from Ann Arbor. It's one thing, like you're of course going to be like overwhelmed and swamped in people caring about your program because of Michigan already, but like they're literally like right down the road. And so you have to like deal with that. So you have to deal with that. But he's been there for 10 years or 10 seasons, and he's managed to get Eastern Michigan to 5 bowl games, which that's almost an impossible task. So if you're able to do that and establish a level of consistency at a program like Eastern Michigan where it's really, really tough, you're like Northwestern should be Northwestern with all the Big Ten money and everything like that. That should be a walk in the park for
you. Yeah, he's definitely had to go through it already, so he would be well prepared for the rigors that the job involves. Some other, like, if you're going to go like at a lower level and you want to get guys that are, funky offenses, Scott Abell at Davidson's an interesting one. They run kind of a weird like option type offense and do some interesting stuff. I don't think Davidson's like an easy school to get into. I believe they're on scholarship too, so he would have some kind of familiarity with difficult recruiting. Another guy that's I don't think you're going to hear this name anywhere else but here. Tony Anise from Ferris State. I think they've gone back-to-back national championships in D2. They run a really wide open, interesting offense that's got a bunch that's being studied by a ton of people. They're heading to the White House. Their championship teams they went back-to-back, so they're looking at a three-peat at a D2 level. I think he's at Ferris State, so not crazy far away.
Ferris State's in Ohio, right? Or
Ohio or Michigan, one of the two. I'm not positive where. Michigan, Big Rapids, Michigan. So, so not in the region at least. And then another name that I thought got thrown out for some jobs last year. Just if you're looking to go like maybe you want to go like the Dion or Trent Dilfer. This name's not quite as big. But he's had some success at a program that wasn't great before he's got there. Mike Minter at Campbell.
Yes.
His name got thrown around last year for some jobs. He could be an interesting one. This is a guy that's like, maybe he'll be able to recruit to the area. He's had some success at Campbell when they haven't been great. And he's got that NFL pedigree. So if you want to go outside the box, there's some names outside the box. But I think one of our I really think Fritz, Munkin, I think those kind of guys. I like Creighton a lot too, and Mason's interesting just because of his background being at Stanford and Vanderbilt. And you want to talk about a guy that's well liked. Everybody seems to like Derek Mason. So I think one of those guys would be great. I'm really interested to see, if people are throwing around Matt Campbell. I don't think I don't think he waited all this time to take the Northwestern job.
You can level up in the Big Ten because I think everyone kind of agrees that he's been positioning himself for a while to kind of stay in the Midwest and take over like a bigger job, and going to Northwestern's kind of, I wouldn't say a step down from Iowa State, but just more.
I think your chances to win go down.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you might become whoever takes his job might be coming into like, where you're winning like 4 games in the last 2-3 years. Like you might come into a situation where this team doesn't win a game this year.
Yeah,
they went one and they won one, which is their first one last year. So you might be going like almost 2 years between 2 calendar years between victories when you come in to take over. So I just don't see. I saw some people put him out there. Some like even Mike Elko. Like, hey, if he has another good year, he can probably do better, right? Like this is, to me, this is a last stop or somebody taking a jump, like a bigger jump. So I think you get an older guy here. The other one's Hartline. Some people have thrown Hartline out. Do you think he would do? To me, he's such a great recruiter and he's a great technician at receiver. I think he waits for something else, right?
Yeah, because I mean, you have, again, like Hartline, he's at the top of like position coach, coordinator,
and he allegedly wants to be an NFL guy. He said that he wants to be an NFL guy, right? So,
yeah, you're not gonna jump right into what could potentially be a buzzsaw. What's your first job? You'll be paid handsomely, and you'll be in in one of the two top conferences in the country, but you gotta tread lightly if you're gonna like make that jump to this job.
I think Bud Elliott tweeted out today. He talked to some coaches and they were kind of like, hey, man, it's a great job. You go there, you can make $30-40 million. Your family's set for next 3 generations. You get fired. Like, you're not going to, it's not a great job if you want to win, but if you want to just make a lot of money and get paid and live in a nice area, it's not too bad. So, I'll be real. This is going to be really one of the more interesting coaching searches that we've had just because of all the stuff that just happened, but even outside of that, just the job in and of itself and where the pecking order of the new Big Ten, no more Big Ten Wests. So that makes it a little bit harder. So I'm really interested to see kind of where this thing's up. Nick, thanks for joining us. Where can people find you and in your article on the head coach search?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter when it's not breaking at Nick_J Simon, and then you can find our wonderful work at DraftKings Network. It was DraftKings Nation. Now
it's DraftKings Network.
Network, kind of a soft rebrand over the summer, but you can find all of our articles. We're currently planning out our college football coverage for when the season comes. So yeah, check us out there. It's gonna be a good season. This is always like an interesting time in mid-July where it's still kind of the dead of the off season, but like you're kind of like getting the Irklings like, okay, it's coming. It's right around the corner.
Lindy's is out. Phil Steele's out. Talking season's about to start. Yeah, it's all coming. It's all coming to fruition here. So, Nick, thanks again. You can find me on Twitter at Seth Varnadore. We'll do more of these in the future as breaking news happens, and then during the season we'll be weekly with more than just one other blog boy. So thanks for joining us. Leave a comment below who you think should be the Northwestern head coach. Help us game the YouTube algorithm. Thanks.